Welcome to EdUp Curriculum. I am your host, Nicole Poff, and I know that I always say I'm really excited about the guest, but today I'm really excited about the guest. Today we have Kevin Sanders with us. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. I know when we hopped on a call to just kind of chat about this, we planned a really fun episode. So thank you, Kevin, for being here. Kevin, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, what do you want the audience to know?
Well, Nicole, it's a pleasure to be here. I guess, if I was going to share a little bit of background about myself, something that's unique that some people don't know is that my entire um, college training is in being a professional tuba player and a musician. So, I have that musical and artistic background that I think has kind of informed some of the administrative and leadership work that I do now. And so that has been an interesting journey in itself. But other than that, I'm relatively new to Waco and Baylor. We just moved here in July and just kind of enjoying this new position and working on campus.
That's awesome. I did not know that. Did you?
Oh,
Were
yeah.
you one of those kids who had to like carry your tuba around with you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, if you ever see a marching band, you have those. You wear what they call a sousaphone, a marching tuba. So during high school, we would practice for long, long hours, and I'm pretty sure one of my shoulders is lower than the other because I was always wearing that thing. Yeah, just how it is.
That's so funny. It trained you to be a dad, you know? It's like a tuba,
That's true.
tuba kid, same thing. Same,
That is
same.
so true. So true.
That's awesome. Well, Kevin, something, we connected on LinkedIn, and something that really kind of stood out to me is your passion for leadership. You're always posting about leadership, how much you love it, tips, strategies. Um, as someone who's had a fair share of leaders in my life, the approach you take, I love it. It's inspiring, it's gentle, it's kind. So, my question to you, Kevin, what inspires you as a leader?
Oh, that's really kind, Nicole. I think one of the things that I discovered really early on in my career. First of all, I got out of college and I kind of stumbled into a teaching role, and and that's when I discovered that I really one of the things I love most about teaching is being able to play a part in other people just developing and like growing their skills. That was extremely fulfilling to me. And so that's one of the reasons why I kind of went all in on teaching. And then after a number of years in higher ed, and I had some opportunities to work in administration and leadership, I realized that leadership and admin in higher ed is much the same way, just at maybe a different scale, different challenges. And so, at the end of the day, I approach my role on campus as the same way. It's how can we develop programs? How can we develop people? How can we build them up and make their situation better than it was 6 months ago or a year ago? And if we're doing that, then we're headed in the right direction.
I love that. I love that. Kevin, there's a saying in higher ed. I don't know if you've heard it. The only constant is change. I've heard this my entire career, literally, as the regulations change, the students change. It feels like everything is always changing. For leaders, that can be particularly taxing, right? There's a lot of layers when you're navigating a constantly changing landscape. How do you keep your passion for leadership while navigating this ever changing landscape?
I'm going to be honest. I think the possibility of change is one of the reasons why I like having the leadership position. And so I really think it depends on your perspective and how you think about change. If you think the goal of change is to arrive at a destination where you can relax and be static, or if you view change as something that's risky and you have to have a perfect plan in place before you can move forward, or if you associate change with chaos, then change is going to be an uncomfortable place to live. But for me, I view change as it's a constant. And when we look at ourselves and our own paths as individuals, we want to continue to grow personally or professionally. And I would think that we would want the same of our organizations. And so, building something, iterating on that, and then constantly finding ways to improve and be better. That some of that may be, just based in my musical background, because if you think about learning a piece of music, it's very much the same way. Um, you may begin to learn a piece of music, but if you talk to professionals, oftentimes you never really arrive where you want to be, and it's a constant process of improving or tweaking, and that journey can be a part of what makes it exciting. Because if you think about any really amazing idea or initiative that you see happening on campuses around the country, it rarely, I should say, it almost always starts out as something small, sometimes something messy, and it develops and builds over time into something that really is kind of a best practice or something that people aspire to.
That's so true. Some of the best ideas were just like little napkins, writing on napkins, right? Um,
That's great.
so embracing the change, that's a great kind of tip. I think in higher ed, we might struggle with this a little bit because sometimes we want to know the exact outcome, right? Or we went to all the school and we want to know exactly what's coming. So you embracing the change, I think is a great, especially in today's world. I think that's a great tangible tip of just embrace the messy chaos of change.
I'll share this. One of the things that we talk about is that I think academics in general are risk averse, but really we have quite a few safety nets in place, and I think just kind of gaming out this or workshopping out this process of okay, if this doesn't work, what happens next? And oftentimes it's, well, we submit a curriculum proposal and we fix it and everything's okay. And so I think just kind of playing out that can sometimes allay the fears, but it is, I think waiting around for a perfect plan is, you're going to be waiting for a while.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great strategy that we're not, nothing is set in stone. Like, do we do this? It doesn't work. What's the plan B? That's a great approach. Now, when we talked, you were really big on like talking about how leadership is not telling people what to think. You're like, I can't tell people what to think as a leader. So, how can leaders, in your opinion, effectively plant those seeds for change without being overbearing?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I may have shared this with you when we first spoke, but someone mentioned to me at one point, a leader can't tell people what to think, but they can certainly help guide what people think about. And so I think there's a couple of different ways you can do that. One of them is just simply the questions that a leader asks. There's a big difference between, you need to start using more technology in your class versus what teaching challenges might you be dealing with right now where technology could help you, or we need to overhaul our curriculum to stay competitive versus what skills do you wish our students had by the time they graduated. It's very different framing, and yet you're still getting people to look at the curriculum or look at their technology use in classroom. There's a couple of other ways. I think as a leader, anytime you can offer up information or data so faculty are seeing the same information that you're seeing. A huge one also for leaders is just creating the space for discussion among faculty members. And then, I think one other that is not often talked about is patience.
Mm.
So, people, I think when you're talking about change, people have to be comfortable. You're creating these conditions where change feels like the next natural step. And so that takes some time. That takes some time for people to catch up to maybe where your mind is. And so anytime you can plant those seeds and be patient, I think you'll reap greater rewards in the long term.
I love that. I love that patience part too. I think that's really important and speaks a lot about you as a leader, because sometimes we need things to move fast, or the perception from leadership is we need things to move quickly. And it sounds like you're really taking time to create this safe environment for your for your people, um, which is awesome.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I love to get stuff done and I like to move quickly, but I have also seen that when you move too quickly, you end up taking more time because either the great idea ends up getting squashed because you didn't bring people along, or you have to back up a couple of steps and redo them. So it's I mean, patience, I think in the long run is going to be one of the most efficient strategies.
Absolutely. Now, this is a curriculum podcast. We've talked a lot about leadership, which is really your jam, but there's also space between, there's an intersection between leadership and curriculum, right? And this is a little bit messier, I feel like, because of things like academic freedom, governance, faculty controlling the curriculum, right? There's all of these little areas in higher ed that make leadership and curriculum an interesting dance, right? Um, but you are not afraid of it. We've talked about it before. In your opinion, leadership and curriculum can work together quite well. So, in your opinion, what role should academic leaders play in shaping curriculum?
I mean, I think so much of it is thinking about what information do I have as a leader that perhaps my faculty do not, or my faculty would benefit from, and and trying to bridge that gap as much as possible. I think academic leaders can impact that through the types of faculty that they hire, through making sure that the curriculum that's being considered within the department aligns with institutional priorities. Um, as a leader, you can make sure that the curriculum considerations you're looking at are aligned with student needs or student surveys that are coming out. I mean, these are all ways, I think, a lot of them are just bringing faculty into the same sorts of information that you're getting. The other piece of that, Nicole, that I'll add that I think is something that really it falls strictly into a leader's lap is I think a huge part of what they do is removing friction from the process, because oftentimes the challenge we face is not we have so many people trying to innovate, and it's more the other way around, and we're trying to get people to not be afraid to change, or even just to make changes in general. So I think anytime a department chair or a dean or a provost can remove friction for faculty to do that great work, whether that is making the proposal process streamlined, or creating greater accessibility to different data points, or simply, again, facilitating the time for faculty to get together and meet and discuss. I mean, all of that helps remove friction, and allows people to really focus on the work and not on the complications of the process.
I love that, because I love that for a couple of reasons. But a lot of talk in higher ed right now is breaking down silos, right? And as a leader, you have access to a lot of information that should be used to design courses. But I think oftentimes that lives with the leaders. And so faculty over here are designing in their own little silos the curriculum. And so bridging the two just makes good sense.
I agree.
Now, I think we answered kind of the next question, the productive ways leaders can impact curriculum design. I think you just kind of hit that nail on the head. On the other side of that, we talked before about productive and destructive ways. What are some of the most destructive ways leaders can try to shape curriculum?
I mean, I think one of the most destructive and also one of the most common ways that you see are top-down initiatives, and I've certainly seen programs created without much faculty consent, or certainly without widespread faculty consent. And what ends up happening is you may get the program through the proposal process, but um, who is going to recruit for it? Who is going to teach it? Who is going to advocate for it? And you're not bringing any ownership along through the process. So I think top down is ultimately it's a big waste of time for everybody if a leader doesn't have the patience to bring faculty along and make sure there's buy-in. I mean, the other piece of that is faculty are going to have perspectives on these things. The dialogue, the back and forth of working through this process, it sometimes, I mentioned removing friction. Sometimes the friction is a good thing. The leaders hearing things that they didn't know about, faculty might be hearing things that they didn't know about, and then hopefully you arrive at an idea that might be even stronger than any of the one single ideas that came out. Um, another thought that can be destructive is just leaving curriculum completely alone. And not really paying attention to it, or having minimal safe changes to it. It's been my experience that really has a tendency to add up to decades worth of band-aids on the curriculum, and then you end up with something that maybe made great sense 15, 20 years ago, and certainly is not serving your needs today. And if you don't have a holistic process to address it, then your program's not being as effective as it should.
I love that. And I think that that's especially the band-aids on the curriculum and, not taking an interest in the curriculum. Going back to kind of how we kicked this off, I think there are a lot of leaders who are scared to have any say in curriculum, right? They're worried that their faculty are going to feel like they're trying to take that away from their faculty, right? Or that they're overstepping their boundaries. I think a lot of leaders I talk to are really just trying to figure out where is that line of leadership, faculty owning the curriculum. And it sounds like you have found a sweet spot. But what I feel like I'm hearing is that you have created kind of this space of trust where when you bring these issues to your faculty, it doesn't sound like they're meeting you with resistance. It sounds like you're like, "Hey guys, we're a team and we support the students, so let's look at this together," right? So so talk to me about this space of trust that it sounds like have created.
Um, Yeah, I mean, this again may come from my musician background, but I think anytime you can collaborate and bring people along in the process is going to be crucial. One of the things that you see often is that department chair, dean, whoever goes to a conference alone, gets filled up with lots of wonderful ideas, comes back, and then preaches about how we need to change things. And one of my philosophies with that is if there is a conference where I feel like is going to be really rich with great ideas, I will bring a couple of faculty members with me, or one of our associate deans, just to make sure that I'm not the only one collecting this information. Even if there's a staff member that I think is going to benefit, that is going to play a crucial role in the change that might be forthcoming, or they may have a good perspective that can help the conversations that I know are going to happen in the future. Bring that person along. And it's the same with campus meetings and conversations that are happening. I will bring people to meetings with the Career Center, or with the registrar, or with advising, or with admissions, just to make sure that they're hearing the same information I hear. And it's interesting, if they hear that, it's more than likely it's not like they're going to reach a different conclusion than I am. And so we kind of come to the same table all equipped with the same bits of information. It makes it a lot easier to find the common ground and how we're going to move forward.
I love that. And there's something about hearing the message or the data kind of firsthand versus from the top down, right? It takes different meaning when you can talk to career services yourself or talk to the registrar yourself and really get that information and ask questions. I think you're hitting something here too is if I go to a conference and you go to a conference together, we are probably going to dial in on very different things, right? You're going to latch in over here. I'm going to obsess with this topic over here. And we're going to come back and we're going to have probably very different perspectives of, I saw this cool thing. Same thing, I feel like when we're talking to the registrar or career services, you as a leader might be latching on to kind of some different concepts, or me as a faculty, I might be like, this would be really cool to put in my classroom, or I didn't realize that my students needed this exact type of support.
And and I agree 100%. And I think one of the cool byproducts of that approach that I've discovered is that when you're bringing people along into those situations with you, they're helping you solve the problem. And I think that's what really helps build the trust, is that this is not me as a chair or a dean telling you how to solve it. It's, let's go collect this information, and then let's figure out how to do this together. And that's I've had a lot of success with that, and I've gotten a lot of great ideas from faculty and from assistant directors and deans because of that process. So it's been effective for me.
I would imagine it feels really empowering to a faculty. And, my situation is unique now because I have stepped outside of academia. So I hear more conversations just from outside now. And there's so much distress just as an industry, right? That the faculty don't trust the administration. They feel like administration doesn't trust them. Their students aren't trusting the school, right? There's all of these trust issues, and you are shaping this space that literally flips all of the issues that we're having right now. It flips it on its head. You're starting with trust as a foundation here, and you're bringing everyone in to help you solve it versus solving it yourself. And I just can't imagine. I would feel like your faculty probably feel pretty empowered to take ownership in the program.
No, I mean, I would hope so. I mean, I mean, to your point, one of the things you see often is when there is a crisis or a problem to be solved, you often see leadership, seal the doors. Let's go into PR crisis mode and figure out how we're going to solve this. And you shut out all the very people who could help you figure out a great solution. So yeah, I mean, creating some ownership of the problem solving is huge.
It's funny that you mentioned closing doors, because I think what happens too is when doors are closed by leadership, faculty and staff, they feel they create what's happening behind that door, right? They're creating stories about what's happening behind that closed door. And a lot of times it's things like job security, financial stability of the institution. Are we all losing our jobs? What's happening here? They're creating a story for you when that door is closed.
That is right.
Um, and so you're like, we're going to keep this door open and we're going to solve this together. I love that. Now, how do you approach a conversation with a faculty? Let's say a course needs improvement or a program needs improvement. How do you approach that conversation?
I think with that question, it really depends on how did we determine the course needed improvement. Um, so I'll give you a couple of examples of things that I've seen in the past. We had a core class in our curriculum. It was taught by an adjunct, and we determined that the outcomes of that class were not serving all of our majors. And so that was an easy conversation to have, because we went to the adjunct and sorry about that.
No, you're
We
fine.
went to the adjunct and we had a conversation about that. We asked for their input on the class because they were just teaching what we had asked them to teach. And so that was simple. We've also had I've had more complicated conversations than that, where we've dealt with perhaps like a senior faculty member who's teaching a graduate level course, and again, we wanted to make sure that the outcomes of that course were preparing students in a certain way. And so my approach with things like that, anytime you can zoom out and have a conversation with faculty about what are we ultimately trying to accomplish? It's not necessarily about your class is doing something wrong or we need to quote unquote fix something, but can we zoom out and can we talk about how can we connect what's happening in your class with what's happening in another part of the school or in another class happening elsewhere. And that's a win-win because you're reinforcing the great teaching that's happening in that faculty member's class, and you're producing stronger student outcomes at the same time.
I love that. That's really gentle. That's a very gentle approach, Kevin. And it's always a sensitive subject, right? If we're coming to a faculty member about their class, it's like that's the product that they've created. And so I feel like there's a lot of times where walls can immediately come up, right? It's like, nope, 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 don't touch this. It's mine. Um, and you, again, once again, with your leadership style, is really kind of flipping that a bit differently to help do the exact same thing that we would do if we just came in and said, you need to revise this.
I mean, so much of this is really your approach to these situations and how we frame things in our mind. Am I approaching this as this is a problematic faculty member who is being stubborn about what they teach, or am I approaching this as, this faculty member may not be aware of how we're trying to connect what they're doing in their class with something over here, and I mean, my experience has been 9 times out of 10. They want to work with their peers. They want to help you problem solve if you can bring them in.
Absolutely. And I think something that has been kind of in the background of everything you have been saying is this idea of intention. Like it sounds like to me, you never approach this with assuming that the faculty have bad intentions. In fact, it sounds like you flip that around and you assume that the faculty have the best intentions and maybe they just don't know. I think that's huge too. I think that's a big part of leadership is assuming that your faculty or your staff have the best intentions in mind.
I mean, I think that's true, and I mean, it's the benefit of the doubt that I would hope someone would give me. Oftentimes, when I make mistakes or I do something that I'd love to take back, it's often because I wasn't aware or I didn't have a piece of information, and so yeah, I think going in with that mindset is also just, I think, the healthiest way to approach it.
Absolutely. I think it's really refreshing. To you this sounds like all very probably common approaches, but with the amount of conversations I've been having, I can't even explain to you if all leaders took this approach, I 1000% confident we would look very differently right now. There's just so much distrust out there. So many people telling narratives about the students and the faculty, and there's just a lot. And I feel like your leadership style and approach, you really have this down, Kevin. Um, and it probably sounds so simplistic to you, but this is not the way that a lot of people are approaching leadership in higher ed today.
I mean, Nicole, one of the reasons why I love talking about this is because this is one of the challenges of higher ed, right? I mean, you are an excellent faculty member, or you're really good at, this kind of other life, and then you might get recruited, or you might seek out this leadership role, and oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, the institution doesn't have the development opportunities for you to grow. And so that was certainly my experience. I realized early on that there were a lot of skill sets that I needed to develop if I was going to be effective in the role. And so I sought out a lot of different ways to develop those skills. And so now it's one of the reasons why I love to write on LinkedIn. I like to just share that with other people.
Absolutely. That actually segues into this idea of faculty development. A lot of institutions, I think, struggle with this. I just had a guest on who she felt like centers for teaching excellence and learning, like she was like, those are dumping grounds these days. People just put a bunch of resources into a class or repository, and they're like, here you go, teachers. Here's all the things that you need, to support your students. How can leaders invest in faculty growth in meaningful ways?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Those centers for teaching, they can be great resources, but I think we are passing the buck if we put all responsibility in their lap. Same with career centers, same with some of these other resources that we have on campus. There was some stat that I can't remember where it came from, but it was something like 75% of decisions that are made on campus happen at the department chair level. And so, if you really want your faculty to grow, if you want great ideas to be shared, if you're a department chair or a dean, I would encourage you to take that on as a personal responsibility. Use the Center for Teaching as a resource. Bring them in when you can, but at the end of the day, you're the face that people connect with. You have things at your fingertips where you can make things happen, and so I would just encourage you to take that responsibility on. I think it's easy when you have a big budget, right? But I also think there's 1,000 things you can do that don't require almost any budget at all. And so, I think that's one of the most amazing things about working on a college campus is that you're surrounded by brilliant people of all different backgrounds. And so, it doesn't cost anything but a little bit of time to put a peer-led workshop or a committee together, or a cross-department teaching exchange, or a watch session with a free webinar, and maybe as a leader you develop some sort of like activity afterwards, or roundtable discussions. I was talking to one of our faculty yesterday, and I discovered that during the pandemic, and I wasn't here, so I'm not taking credit for this, but it was a really cool idea. The women on our faculty had a women's writing group, and so they would meet on Zoom, and they would either be writing, some of them because we're a music school, some of them would be practicing, and that was just a time to come together and support the work each other is doing. That doesn't cost anything. And so, again, as a leader, the opportunity to encourage that or facilitate that it will reap dividends.
Absolutely. I love that writing workshop or just writing together. I think too that is a good model for our students, right? If for faculty, what are we doing to model to our students things like taking care of ourselves and professional collaboration and professional growth? Modeling the behavior that we would hope that our students would act in as well. And we always want our students to get involved in little study groups with each other. And so in my mind, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Faculty created a little study group together, and started writing together.
That's right. It's a little bit harder to do when you have families and all these other parts of your life that you have to take care of. But in academia, just to think about taking full advantage of the environment around you and bringing in new ideas and making sure that we're not stagnant, I think that's a great thing to model to students.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about kind of your own professional development. I always kind of like to ask this type of question. What is one book or podcast or resource that has shaped the leader you are today? You don't have
I
to
was
pick
thinking
just
about
one.
this. Yeah, I mean, one author that I'm a big fan of is Simon Sinek, and I love his book Leaders Eat Last. And then if you've watched any of his little video snippets that you can find all over the web, they're great. And it's a lot of his work is a wonderful reminder of, yes, these leadership roles come with titles and authority, but at the end of the day, these are service roles. Your job is to take care of the people in your charge, and so that's kind of front of mind for me when in the decisions that I'm making every day. And so I love one of the other things that he says that I really like is that we oftentimes approach leadership as go to a one-day workshop, get your certificate, you're now a leader, and we know that's not how it works. It's a skill that you have to practice at over time. You make mistakes, you learn, you grow, and if you're willing to invest that time, then you can be really effective.
Absolutely. I love Simon Sinek. What does he have to start with a Y as well, right?
Yeah, that's one of his first books. I love that.
Yep. Okay. If you could give one piece of advice to someone stepping into a leadership role in higher ed, which I feel like is probably pretty relevant today, right? We got lots of leaders going out, lots of leaders coming up. What would that piece of advice be?
This is easy. I would recommend that they get plugged in and try to find a network of other leaders. Um, that's the best advice I can give. People that you're going to be able to lean on for advice, occasionally get praise, and help you problem solve. I feel like a lot of the other advice I could give is going to be addressed if you have a group of people that you can connect with. And now more than ever, that's, sometimes campuses will have groups where department chairs can get connected, but you can find people on LinkedIn now, your professional network for your national or international conference. And I think that's really, really important because department chair or a dean position, there are some things that you cannot vent down to faculty or staff. There are some things you cannot share, and so I think having people to help you problem solve and kind of deal with those hard days it's really an important piece to being sustainable through the role.
I love that. And with LinkedIn now, that's so attainable. I think back to probably 15 years ago, if you didn't have LinkedIn, it might have been a little bit harder to find that kind of tribe, let's call them. But now, and what I love about higher ed is everyone wants to help. I was talking to someone the other day and I was like, in higher ed, like we don't really see each other as competition. We're peers, right? There is very much this idea of let me hop on a call with you. I'm happy to hop on a call with you and share strategies, approaches, even if it's the same program. I recently connected two program leaders, both having online DNP programs. And in any other world, probably it would have been like, oh, two CEOs meeting and they're selling the exact same product. But in higher ed, they're like, yeah, I'm happy to chat and share, what we've been doing that's working, and vice versa. There's just this collaborative peer spirit in higher ed that I think is hard to understand unless you're in it. And coming back full circle to you, I think any new leader could reach out on LinkedIn to seasoned leaders and say, can we meet? Can I talk to you? And they would happily say yes.
Absolutely, yeah, and folks have done that to me, and I've been more than excited to help in any way I could. Just hearing you talk, it reminds me, you think about sometimes you see these football rivalries. And so, the football teams may have a really strong rivalry, but what everyone might not know is oftentimes the marching bands of the opposing teams are actually really good friends. The two directors of the two marching bands, they may have even gone to the same school together, and there's great camaraderie there. And I think that collaborative spirit speaks to music.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great point. All right. This is our last question. This is for you as well. If you could go back in time and give little baby Kevin advice as a first time higher ed leader, what would it be?
Yeah, I think that probably the biggest thing would be, one of the things I struggled with my first year or two was making time for deep work. I was so caught up in just the keeping my head above water, that I didn't make time for the big projects. And when often that is the very thing that makes me feel like I'm being productive. And so I think anytime I can make time for that, especially early on, carve out that time to do writing or research, I think is critical.
I think that is really profound. That's something I struggle with is that deep work, right? Because you're right, as a leader or a business owner or whatever, you're shuffling all day long. That's really sound advice. How do you do that? Do you set aside time each day, a day a week?
I time block. Right now, my strategy changes every couple of months, but right now it's to take a couple of hours once a week and to dedicate to whatever I'm working on, and just keep it sacred. Don't negotiate against yourself. Don't compromise. Like carve that out.
Yeah, I love that. That's so valuable. That's good. I'm glad we ended there. Okay. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for being here. I think I could talk to you all day. Your faculty are really lucky, and Baylor's really lucky, Kevin.
Thank
I
you.
know you're still relatively new there, but um, your approach, I hope people are listening because you are truly one of the good leaders.
Oh, thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it. I loved having a chance to talk to you today. So thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to EdUp Curriculum. I'm your host, Nicole Poff, and we will see you next week.